You won't believe what happened to me right in my own neighborhood. Imagine waking up one morning to find your house being bulldozed, not because of any emergency or a legal order, but because the homeowners association decided they didn't like something about it. That's exactly what went down, and trust me, it was every bit as shocking and terrifying as it sounds. I'm a cop, and I never expected to be caught in the middle of something like this. But the craziest part? I caught the whole thing on camera. From the moment I realized what was happening, I knew this wasn't just some simple HOA disagreement. There's something deeper going on, a clash between power, control, and people's rights. The HOA had always been strict, but nothing like this. And suddenly, my peaceful neighborhood felt less like home and more like a battleground. The heavy machinery, the chaos, the destruction, none of it felt real until it was happening right in front of me. I'm going to take you through everything. The early signs that something was off, the tense moments when I confronted them, and the shocking destruction that followed. But this isn't just about a bulldozer or a house, it's about what happens when authority goes unchecked, and what it means to stand up for what's right, even when you're outnumbered. I'm sharing this story because it's not just mine. It's about anyone who's ever felt powerless in their own home, anyone who's faced unfair treatment, and anyone who wants to know the truth behind what happened when the HOA tried to erase my home. But the story doesn't end here. What happened next changed everything, and you'll want to stick around to see how I fought back and what the consequences really were. The tension had been building for weeks before that morning, but I didn't realize how serious it was until I saw the bulldozer rolling toward my property. It all started with a few letters from the HOA about minor violations, some complaints about paint colors, landscaping, and a fence that supposedly didn't meet their strict rules. I tried to keep things civil, attending meetings, asking questions, and even offering to make changes. But behind the scenes, it felt like there was something else going on. I got the sense that this wasn't about rules anymore. It was personal. The HOA board had grown more aggressive, sending emails that felt more like threats than notices. Neighbors who once said hello now avoided eye contact. And rumors began swirling about who had ties to the board and what their real intentions were. I started talking to other homeowners, trying to piece together if anyone else had faced similar treatment. Turns out there were more stories than I expected: quiet battles, fines piling up, and in some cases, people feeling pushed out. What made it worse was the way the HOA operated. There was no clear explanation for the bulldozing order, no formal court judgment, nothing that should have allowed them to tear down someone's home. I asked questions, called legal advice, and tried to get answers, but every door seemed to close in my face. The community, which should have been a place of support, now felt like a maze of power plays and hidden agendas as the bulldozer's engine roared closer. I grabbed my phone and started recording. I knew that footage could be the only thing standing between justice and a complete loss. The people behind this weren't expecting me to fight back, and that gave me hope. But even with the camera rolling, the situation was far from clear. What was the real reason behind this? And what was I about to uncover next? As the bulldozer's blade edged closer to my front porch, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was about more than just my house. It was about control, how far a homeowners association could push before someone stood up. I kept recording, my heart racing, knowing that every second mattered. Around me, neighbors gathered, whispering in confusion and fear. Some looked sympathetic, others wary, as if unsure whether to support me or stay silent. The HOA board members had always presented themselves as neighborhood caretakers, but now their true colors were showing. I started digging into their history and discovered a tangled web of disputes and questionable decisions. Some board members owned construction companies that benefited from enforcing these strict rules. Others had personal grudges that seemed to influence their choices. It was a toxic mix of power, money, and old resentments, exactly the kind of thing you don't want running your community. Meanwhile, I wasn't just fighting the HOA. I had to balance this with my job as a cop, where I'm sworn to uphold the law and protect people's rights. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, trying to protect my own home from destruction without any legal backing, while also being part of the system that should keep things fair. Friends and colleagues started asking questions, some offering help, others warning me to be careful. The tension between my professional role and personal battle made everything more complicated. Then there was my family. My partner worried about what this fight was doing to us, afraid the HOA's actions might escalate. My kids didn't fully understand why their home was under threat, but felt the unease in the air. It was clear this wasn't just about me or a house anymore. It was about a community divided. It's about fairness and justice in a place people call home. And as the sun rose higher, the bulldozer operator paused, looking back at me through the cab window. That moment, the silent standoff felt like the calm before the storm. What happened next would change everything. The minutes felt like hours as I stood there, phone in hand, filming every detail. The bulldozer's engine growled low. The driver's eyes fixed on the controls, but occasionally flicking to me and the small crowd gathering around. The tension was thick, like something ready to snap. I could see the frustration on neighbors' face, some scared, none sure what to do. The HOA board members were nowhere in sight, hiding behind their legal letters and anonymous threats while the destruction was about to happen. It felt like a showdown, and I was standing alone in the middle of it. I called out to the operator, asking if he had any orders to stop, but all I got was a shrug and a tense silence. The feeling of helplessness was overwhelming, but I knew I had to stay calm. If I lost my temper now, I'd lose the only advantage I had, the clear, undeniable video evidence. I was ready to bring this fight into the light. In the background, I could hear the faint murmur of phone calls being made, neighbors whispering about what this meant for all of us. Rumors flew fast. Someone said the HOA was trying to make an example out of me. Others believed there was a bigger scheme to force people out and take over the neighborhood for development. No one really knew the full story, and that uncertainty made the whole thing even more dangerous. My mind raced as the bulldozer edged closer to the porch. I thought about my family, about the promises I made to protect them, and about what this fight said about standing up when everything feels against you. This was more than property damage, was a battle over respect, rights, and what it means to have a home. Then, just as the bulldozer blade touched the wood, everything froze. The world seemed to hold its breath. And in that silence, I knew. The moment of truth was right in front of me. What happened next would change everything, but still didn't know if it would be for better or worse. Just as the bulldozer's blade pressed against the edge of my porch, a sudden sound shattered. The tense silence, a loud, authoritative voice echoing from down the street. A squad car's siren wailed, and within moments, flashing lights filled the scene. I barely had time to lower my phone before 2 patrol cars screeched to a halt in front of my house. Out jumped fellow officers, some I knew well from work. Their faces tight with concern and confusion. The arrival of law enforcement was supposed to bring order, but instead, it only twisted the situation deeper into chaos. The HOA bulldozer operator froze, and one of the officers immediately approached him, asking for permits or any legal documents authorizing this demolition. That's when things took an even darker turn. The operator handed over a torn piece of paper with official-looking stamps, but something didn't add up, which clearly forged. My stomach dropped. Not only was my home under illegal attack, but now there was evidence that the HOA was involved in forgery to justify this destruction. This wasn't just an overreach anymore, it was potentially criminal. The officers looked at me, then at each other, their unease growing. Suddenly, neighbors who had been silent before started stepping forward, sharing stories of suspicious notices and threats they'd received. It was clear the HOA's tactics were more sinister and widespread than I had imagined. As I held my phone steady, capturing every moment, I realized this was no longer just my fight. The stakes had risen for everyone in the neighborhood. The facade of the community protectors had cracked wide open, revealing a deeper conspiracy that threatened not just one home, but the entire block. With the clock ticking and the HOA's shadow looming larger, I knew the battle was far from over, and the next moves could change everything. The moment felt electric as the officers gathered around the forged document, their expressions hardening. One of them radioed in the details, confirming that no valid permits had been filed for demolition. The bulldozer operator was ordered to shut down the machine immediately. I felt a surge of relief, but the tension hadn't fully lifted. This was only the beginning of what was about to unfold. With my footage in hand and the officers on site, the HOA's plan was starting to unravel. The forged paperwork was the smoking gun, exposing the lengths they'd gone to push me and possibly others out of their own homes. Soon after, several neighbors came forward, encouraged by the visible police presence, sharing their own experiences of intimidation and unfair fines. The HOA board members were under investigation, and the story was gaining attention beyond our quiet street. But just as I thought the nightmare was ending, the final twist hit. While reviewing the video, I noticed a man in a suit speaking with the bulldozer operator before the destruction began, someone not from our neighborhood or the HOA board. Curious, I dug deeper and uncovered that a local developer had been quietly buying up homes nearby, waiting for an opportunity to turn the whole block into something else, something none of us wanted. The bulldozing wasn't just a rogue HOA act. It was part of a larger scheme to clear the way for new construction. Disguised behind the HOA's rules and threats, I shared this new discovery with the officers and neighbors, turning what started as a personal fight into a full community stand. We had proof, we had witnesses, and now we had a clear enemy beyond the HOA's surface. The bulldozer had stopped, but the battle for our homes, our rights, and our neighborhood was far from over. And with this unexpected enemy revealed, I knew the real fight was just beginning. After that day, things started to shift in our neighborhood. The police investigation into the HOA's illegal actions moved quickly once they saw the forged permits and heard from the neighbors, the HOA board. Members faced serious questions, and some eventually stepped down or were removed. It felt like justice was finally catching up with those who had abused their power at the same time. The discovery of the developer's involvement put everyone on high alert. We organized community meetings, shared information, and worked together to protect our homes from any future threats. The sense of unity grew stronger, and people who once felt isolated began to stand up together. For me, this fight wasn't just about saving my house, it became about preserving the neighborhood. We all loved, my family slowly found peace again, knowing that our home was safe and that our voices mattered. The stress of those weeks took a toll, but it also showed us how important it is to stay vigilant and fight for what's right, no matter the odds. I'm proud to say that through patience, persistence, and community support, we pushed back against an unfair system and exposed the truth. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's that sometimes standing up feels impossible, especially when powerful forces seem to be against you. But recording what's real, asking questions, and refusing to back down can make all the difference. And sometimes, the fight to protect your home becomes a fight to protect something bigger, your community, your rights, and your future. Thanks for sticking with me through this story. If you've ever faced challenges with an HOA or felt powerless in your own home, know you're not alone. Together, change is possible. Asterisk.